Hey there, welcome back to Nmap, Network Scanning Basics and Advanced Techniques. My name is Jason Wood, and again, I'm here as your instructor for this course. This section, I want to talk a little bit about some of the legal considerations around performing network scanning. And to start off, I want to make very clear, really nothing I say is legal advice. I'm not any kind of an attorney. I only know lawyers, so you want to make sure that you are getting your own advice on this. If you have questions about legal issues, where you're at, and everything that I have, as experience with, of course, is here in the United States and Canada and areas around there. But even though I can't give you any legal advice, I do want to give you some things to think about here as you consider the ramifications of performing network scanning. And the first question that folks will ask about this is it legal? Is this something that I could get arrested for or whatever? And the response, if you talk to an attorney, they're going to say this as well, but really, it just kind of depends. Generally speaking, I found network scanning, of course, is perfectly legal if you're scanning your own systems and networks. It's your own property at that point, so that's not a big deal. You also, it's legal if you are, you have explicit permission to go out and scan the hosts or networks you want to go after. So, what do I mean by getting explicit permission? Well, what I would look at here is keep in mind whether or not, what if you're doing this at work, right? What are your job responsibilities? And is it documented in your job description that you are required to perform security testing and or responsible for maintaining hosts and discovering hosts? Things like that. It's really common to see, a job description that says, hey, this position requires individual the person in this position to do security testing. And so that starts to give you some backing here in writing showing that, yep, this is what I'm authorized to do. If you're doing this as a consultant, what you want to have there is some documentation that's explicitly calling out that you're authorized to perform this security assessment, and that is going to include tools such as Nmap and other tools that you would use. So, practically speaking, how does that work out? Well, what I've done myself is anytime that I do consulting work, my full-time position, we do a couple things. First, we set up a services agreement and, formally establishing a relationship between the company I work for and our client. And then we have a signed statement of work, detailing out what the job is. Now, there are some considerations. I know, example, I have a host, let's say, up in Amazon AWS, and I want to test that. Or a series of networks. That's fine. Amazon actually has a mechanism for you to get authorized to perform that testing. So you make the request, here are the hosts we want to test at, here's what we're trying to do, and here's where our traffic will be coming from. Amazon approves that, and away you go. So you want to talk to your providers as well and make sure that they're good to go with this. Now, when can it be considered illegal? Well, obviously, if you don't have permission, it's not your network, and you don't have any type of written permission to do that, then you are, potentially breaking the law. If you are doing scanning and you don't have permission and all that, but, they don't care up until the point that you start degrading the function of their network or the host or their applications, people start to get excited at that point. And so that's where you start to get into trouble. And sometimes, to be quite honest with you, people ask me, well, would I really get arrested just for doing a network scan? And the answer is no, probably not. However, you may live in a place that the government has a rather negative view of this type of activity by their citizens, so they respond more robustly. you may run into a situation where you're doing this and somebody gets ticked off at you. And so they turn around and take some kind of legal action. So, it really can be applied rather inconsistently, I guess would be the term that I would use, as far as when some kind of action could take place. But generally speaking, like I said, if it's your own systems and you've got some kind of explicit permission, then you're usually pretty good to go. And I always recommend that, if you have any questions about this, make sure you're getting it in writing. Simply having your boss tell you, yeah, go ahead, could wind you up in getting you into some trouble, because they can always say later, no, I didn't agree to that. So one thing you also want to consider, of course, and I've kind of briefly bumped into this, depending on where you're at, the laws change. So, and we obviously have different laws in different countries throughout the world. And to be honest, even here inside of the United States, we have different laws depending on the state you're in. I mean, yes, you have federal crimes, or laws rather, that could be applied to some of the activities around computer security and hacking. But even states have different views of it, and what one state will do, another state will not. So you want to be aware of that. Make sure that you are, you're talking to somebody to get good advice about where you're at. Again, safest bet, make sure that you have some kind of explicit permission. So, just to kind of recap this, again, I am not an attorney. I can't give you legal advice, but to keep in mind, some folks can decide that what you're doing with some of these security tools, such as Nmap, is illegal. And so you want to make sure that you think about this ahead of time, you consider the legal ramifications, and make sure you have some kind of explicit permission, and try and get that into writing as much as possible. All right. Any questions on this, please feel free to drop me a line. Like I said, I can't give you real good legal advice, but I can point you at some references. So, if you have any questions, let me know. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.